This is a continuation of Robert Swindel's The Ice Palace. The wind was strong and the snow was deep, and Ivan went very slowly with his head down. All at once he felt the snow shift and he cried out. Beneath his feet a great crack opened up, and lumps of snow as big as houses fell into it with a hissing roar. He flung himself forward, trying to reach the other side. His mittens grabbed at the lip of the crack, but it crumbled and he was falling. Desperately, he clutched at a tiny fir tree that grew outward from the side of the crack. It was so small that he knew it would never hold him. His weight would pull it out by the root and he would fall, down with the tumbling snow blocks to be buried forever in the bottom of the crack. But the little fir tree held. It jerked him to a stop and held. He dangled by one arm over the drop as an avalanche of snow hurtled, roaring into the chasm. Afterwards, he could never tell how long he hung there. He only knew that at last the avalanche stopped, and he scrambled his way somehow out of that ghastly crack. For a long time he lay in the snow, sobbing with fright at the horrible fate he had escaped. Then, wearily, he got to his feet and brushed the snow from his clothes with his mittened hands. His heart was heavy, and if it had not been for the crack that now blocked the way, he might have given up and returned to his distant home. As it was, he sighed, turned his face into the north wind, and went on. Presently, it began to grow dark. I must find another snowdrift, said Ivan to himself. He sighed. Long ago, when his father had taught him how to make a snow den, it had been fun. Now it just seemed like hard work. Snow dens are quite warm, he thought, but they're not like my little bed at home. The sky was a deep grey, turning black. When Ivan found his snowdrift, he fell to his knees and began to scrape out a tunnel with his mittened hands. After a moment, he stopped. His head tilted to one side. From far away, carried on the wind, he thought he heard music. He listened. The pine trees creaked and sighed, and snow powder hissed over the frosty crust. Then he heard it again. It was the sound of a fiddle. Ivan screwed up his eyes and shook his head fiercely. No, it was not real. It could not be real. It was another cruel trick to hurt him, to keep him from doing what he must do. He began once more to scrape at the snow, whistling a little between his teeth to blot out the sound of the fiddle. But when he stopped, there it was, rising and falling in the wind. He got to his feet and gazed towards the sound, biting his lip. There was a faint glow in the sky beyond the pines, and now he was sure there were voices too, mixed in with the fiddle. He looked down at his unfinished den, then out again towards the glow. It seemed real, all of it. The fiddle, the voices, and the glow. He saw a picture in his mind of people, happy people who laughed and shouted and danced to the fiddle. And suddenly he was overcome with loneliness. He left the snowdrift and began hurrying through the trees, his eyes fixed on that warm, hypnotic glow. He came out of the trees onto a long slope, and there below him lay a village. Lamplight glowed warmly in all its windows and spilled out of the doorways into a crowded street. Everyone in the village seemed to be out of doors, and when Ivan looked down the street, he could see why. At the far end of it, someone had built an enormous fire. Its flames rose high in the air, and the snow all round was pink with its glow. And the music! It wafted in great clouds up the slope, and Ivan had never heard such music. He was weary, but he wanted to dance. He was far from his home, yet he felt like shouting. And up towards him, their laughter spangling the night, came children. a long ribbon of children, hand in hand, running up the hill. When they drew near, they stopped, and their leader smiled, holding out his hand to Ivan. "Come," he said, "tonight is a feast, and you are welcome here." And though it was winter, and though the night was a cold one, these children had on summer clothes, and all the girls wore flowers in their hair. In the village below the fiddles began a fresh tune. The line of children stared restlessly like a string of spirited ponies. The boy beckoned, his smile inviting. "Come," he said once more. "My friends would dance." And stepping forward, Ivan slipped off a mitten and gave his hand. At once they went whirling away, across the slopes and down to where people danced through the pools of lamplight on the snow. Ivan, skipping, threw back his head and laughed. The line had reversed itself so that now the last child had become the first and was leading them on the street. Once in the village, they did not keep to the street, but began threading themselves like a many-coloured serpent to and fro between the houses. Once their leader took them through the doorway of a house, and Ivan had a glimpse of tables, chairs, and a big tiled stove before he was whirled out again into the night. People were everywhere, but if anyone noticed a stranger in their midst, no one seemed to mind. The music grew louder, and coming round the corner of the house, Ivan saw that they were close to the great fire. In the flames, an ox was roasting, and nearby, on upturned barrels, sat the fiddlers. Their bows flashed back and forth across the strings of their fiddles, and they tapped their feet in time upon the beaten snow. The line of children circled, forming a ring with the fiddlers in the middle. Round and round they whirled, the firelight dancing in their eyes. Then the circle broke, and the child who had led them was thrust into the centre among the fiddlers, and the tune changed, and she danced a special dance for them while they went round and round. When her dance was finished, the girl rejoined the circle. The next child was pushed forward, and the tune changed again. Ivan watched through tears of joy. The cold was gone, and the loneliness. What would be the tune when his turn came? And what steps would he dance? Round and round and round. The people of the village had stopped their dancing now, and were crowding forward to watch the children. And as they watched, they clapped their hands to the fast, clever rhythm. The boy beside Ivan grinned, winked at him, and leapt into the centre. The child whose dance was done took Ivan's hand. The circle never stopped spinning. "My dance next," cried Ivan. "A few more moments and I will show you dancing." They whirled on. Ivan gasped as a volley of wind whipped about his legs, unimaginably cold. It scooped up a twist of crystals, spun them round his body. In an instant he was blinded as the stinging powder lashed at his eyes. He tore his hands from those of his friends and fell to the ground, clawing at his face. The crystals turned to water, and he blinked them from his eyes. He had broken the circle. He must get up and take his place, or the dance would be spoiled. Already the fiddlers had stopped playing. He scrambled to his knees and cried out in pain and disbelief. The fire was gone. There was no ring of children, nor any mark upon the snow where they had been. There were no villagers. The houses lay cold and broken along the empty street. Snow shifted through sagging doors, and the wind moaned in sightless windows, staring here and there a rag of ancient curtain. He knelt there in the snow and wept for the pretty phantoms of the dance, his tears becoming ice upon his cheek. And when at last the crying stopped, so that he could see again, he saw before him a great black hole in the place where the fiddlers had been. A well, a deep, deep well, with smooth sides and a black, icy water far down in the bottom of it. And he knew that if his turn had come to dance, then that black water would have closed forever over his head. He got to his feet, shuddering, backing away from the well. Was it possible? They had been so beautiful. They had befriended him and made him one of them. Would they have led him to the brink of the well? Would they have let him fall? He stood there, forlorn in the broken village. The wind blew around him, and there was laughter in it, and he knew.